Welcome in here to Warchant TV. We are back. Ben Spicer, Michael Langston here coming your way, talking FSU football recruiting. And on today, we're mixing it up a little bit. We've got questions from our great members on the warchant.com message boards, the premium recruiting boards, where Michael has started a new weekly thread, or I guess continued on a tradition that you do there on the PRB, and answering people's recruiting questions. So I've went and picked out several. So if they suck, you can yell and throw tomatoes at me. But these are questions that I thought were interesting, or at least I thought Michael's answers were interesting.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy this, definitely make sure you head over to the PRB. This is something you'll be doing every week, right, Michael, for the
Yeah,
coming
I'll be
week?
doing every week. I'm going to start a new one. This has actually been one that's gone a week, maybe a week and 3 days, where I'll start a new one like on Monday, guys. So you can ask so I'll do it again on Monday, and I'm kind of going to do it just every Monday. I'll start a new one. But yeah, this one's kind of a week and a half. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there.
There was some interesting questions, not just about football too. I learned a lot about you,
Yeah.
Michael, so that was pretty fun. But we're
I don't know
we're
if
going to
that's
stick
good or
to
bad.
football. Yeah,
I
we're
don't know
going to
if
stick
that's
to.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but I don't mind. I actually prefer the personal questions. I like when
Yeah,
people ask me because a lot of people don't know, some of the stuff about you individually that, what you do. I mean,
sure.
they see all your product, but they don't know kind of what you do when you're away from, just work. So there's a lot of stuff I do that maybe surprises people, outside of work. So, but yeah, fire away.
Yeah, didn't know you were a big '90s R&B guy. I like that. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. How about that? I
So we've
like all
picked
kinds
out
of music.
we've picked out 4 questions here. I'm going to start, and I'm probably going to butcher this user's name, so I apologize. Mugiwara Knoll. He says, or they say, who else is on the board at defensive end and linebacker? Seems like we're going to have to move on to plans B and C. Also, any chance we take another defensive tackle, we need to replenish what we're going to be losing. So we started with a little 2-for-1 question for you.
Okay. Yeah, I can't really give you an answer on defensive end. Obviously, Jared Smith is the main guy. I like Auburn there. After that, it gets kind of murky. They could cycle around back to a guy like Clayton, who's committed to Wisconsin, but um, kind of makes me apprehensive if they didn't go full throttle the first time, although it looked like it was going to be FSU for a while. So that's one that they could circle back to. And then there's other guys that are committed. Zion Grady, certainly Jalen Wiggins. They're not going to stop going. They're not going to stop pushing for these guys. There are going to be a lot of guys in season that they push for. I don't think it's necessary. It has to be a plan B because I've seen a lot of guys. I've seen it happen consistently. It's a yearly thing where a guy wasn't as sharp what you saw in the spring, but then you watch him play during the season. He catches the coach's eye. People want to label him Plan B. That's okay. That's their choice. But I think there's a lot of guys that develop differently, and some guys you get on them just later on because there's a lot of guys that I've seen where FSU likes them really hard in the spring, and then the season starts and they turn to kind of cool on them. They're
Yeah.
not as high on them once the season starts. So it goes both ways where there's going to be more guys. I don't really have an answer for you outside of what I just covered for defensive end. Linebackers, I think, is pretty cut and dry, though. Tavion Wallace is the one that I think definitely you need to keep on your radar. Despite the commitment to Arkansas, I think TJ Alford is another one, probably the one I
Mm.
feel there's the most movement with out of Vero Beach. He's a guy that likes FSU a lot. I know he's going to be at FSU often. He might even be there, for the Seminole Showcase, but we'll see. But I think he's a guy that you do well, and you already have a guy in Ethan Pritchard. So if you get, I think 2 puts you in. You feel like okay, I hit on the quota. 3 really puts you in a really comfortable spot. So I think they're going to still push. I think it's going to be 5 or 6 guys that whether they're committed elsewhere. I haven't heard that there's like a new guy that they're gonna push for at linebacker. Certainly Ty Jackson's another one that we know they're heavily involved with. It's going to officially visit in the fall. So there's several options at I think linebacker compared to what I know at defensive end compared to the situation. I think situations are a little bit different where defensive end you have to kind of make a little more there'll be maybe more new targets maybe possibly entering the picture during the season, but I think both of them are going to be in season recruitment, so that's the best way I can answer that is that you're going to be doing that. I don't if it gets to that point where I feel like, hey, they're taking a lesser guy, I'll mention it on the boards guide. This is probably a lesser guy, and you can let plan B, whatever you want to call it. But and I think too, both of these positions, I think they'll be active in the portal. So I think whether they got what they needed, I think they were still going to be active in the portal. So this just makes it even more, important that I think they'll focus on these positions when it comes to portal time.
Here's to hoping that these position groups can catch fire like we've seen from the receivers. Fingers
Yeah,
crossed,
telling you,
because Coach Dugans has been on fire, as you mentioned in our last
he
video.
is. He is.
Uh, Smiley Noel asked a question that you kind of touched on a little bit on the defensive side of the ball in your last one. So maybe we'll switch to offense for this, or
Okay.
you could just kind of go wherever you want to with it. But Smiley Noel says, any targets we have a good chance at flipping? A nice broad question for you there, Michael.
Yeah, I already talked about Tavion Wallace. I'll mention them again. Yeah, certainly him. I still put Jalen Wiggins in there. I know he shut down the recruitment and whatever, and Florida's got a tough schedule, and there's a
Yeah.
decent chance that if Napier struggles again, he might not be the guy there anymore. Certainly, that opens up everything when you're talking about relationships. It was already a battle with FSU and them, so I think that's definitely something you focus on. On offense, man, that's a tough one because they pretty much hit on all the
Yeah.
the receivers, so it's kind of hard to pick one they didn't get. And then at running back, I think Byron Lewis, Usman Chroma has been kind of the main guy. So I don't see a lot of flipping in there. I will say a, a guy to focus on offense for me would be Max Buchanan, 4-star offensive lineman, committed to Miami. He's committed there for now, but I was told, like, keep your eye on this, Mike, because this is one where FSU's not going to stop. They're very going to be very relentless. I know how much, based on the intel I get, how much Alex covets Max in this class. So I think that's definitely a guy you'll see at FSU at some point for probably a game or something. But I definitely think FSU's definitely not going to give up the ghost on that one. They're going to push hard for Max. I think Zaire Addison's another one that they'll probably push for. So I think you'll have several guys. I would say mostly if there's going to be flip guys on offense, I would say the offensive line because I think every other position, I think overall they feel pretty good about the other guys, the other positions they've done. They haven't lost too many battles there.
Perfect segue to our next question from Jay Gurman. They say, Mike, let's assume, parentheses, big assumption, as we are optimistic but no sure thing, close parentheses, that Josh Petty commits to us and then no
Yeah.
one else by kickoff in Dublin. What is your concern level with only 13? I guess you could make that 14 now.
Yeah.
Verbals at that point. The quality is awesome, but are total numbers concerning to you?
Not really, because it's not going to be a full class. It's not going to be your full 25. It's going to be probably in the 2021 range. So if you're at 14 now and say you add three more, say you add Petty, say you add Bryce Fitzgerald, say you add somebody else, I mean, now you're talking about you're at 17 and you only got 20 to 21, 22, I guess, if you push it. So I think overall they're close to where they want. You also got to make room for flip guys in your class. So I think they're positioned themselves because of the Clark commitment, position themselves from a class total pretty similar, I think, where FSU is wanting to be. Not the two bone horn guys, but I told you they probably have 13 or 14 commits in the summer. So here we are, 14. But just, I think overall, though, comfortably, I think there's been a few misses. Certainly Tavion Wallace, Max Buchanan, but I think overall they're pretty close to what they're doing. What I think FSU was hoping and expecting.
Last question. Let's reflect a little bit, Michael. What do you say?
Okay,
This is Jerry
reflection time.
Santa Rosa Beach Knoll, and they say, how different is your job today as opposed to when you were getting started? What is still the same and what is different? Does transfer portal, NIL, early signing day, and other recent changes make it more challenging? Thanks, and go Knowles.
Yeah, I guess the best way to answer that first is just your job now is like year round.
Mm,
Like where like when you did it before, it was like everything was to get to February,
mm,
and get to that February date. And you're like, once you got February, the message boards will be flooded, whether they're excited or not excited or bitching or complaining, whatever word you want to use. And so you would deal with that, and then you would have a break to like probably all the way to maybe sometimes you get to March where you have a junior day, but you'd at least get like 2 or 3 months off. It's like now when you have the portal, it
Yeah.
never stops because you're not totally done until like May. So and then once May's done, June's right there, and then next thing you know, you're having summer camp. So there's really not a lot of downtime. But and then the intel you have to get up and create or not create, but just find out is a lot more detail with the portal involved because the thing that people I think probably don't think about is like when you're building a class as a coach, you have to leave out guys of what you're going to do in the portal and what you need and where the holes are. And I think that's what FSU does well is that they don't really use the portal the same way other people do. It's like if FSU has a hole somewhere, bam, we go to the portal and they're going to
Right.
get them, and that's what they do. Whereas some teams they just load up because they're better players and they just want to add better players. But FSU feels good about kind of their roster, what they have. So unless there's a hole, I don't think they really push at that position. Now there's times where they'll overload the position, as we saw with the defensive end last year in the portal. But I think for the most part, they hit on whatever the hole is in there. So that's challenging because you have to add up what you're going to add from high school and who you prioritize more. There might be a guy in the portal that what this guy wants to be here, and we feel like he's probably the better player, and he projects better. So you have to decide who's projects better. But also, you can't have a team of full of portal guys. So you got to have guys where you bring along as young guys, and you don't want to discourage them if you just bring in a ton of portal guys, and then that position is just watered down with so many guys where you don't feel like the development can shown to recruits for the next class. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, whether it's the intel, the searching, the information you have to dig is a lot more. It's a lot more defined and detailed, but it's not quite as difficult. It's actually easier in some ways. The portal is much easier to cover because kids aren't really worried about like being excited. It's just
Right.
like if they know what they want, and that was easier to cover. But it's still, you put a lot of digging, and you have to. There's a lot of different things you have to look into, and but it's just more of a quality of around you that you have to do. But it's not like it's easier in some ways because everything, like I said, used to build up to that February, whereas now you can get it in segments where you got a December early signing period, then you have the period with the portal, and then you have the February if you have some guys that are signing late, and it helps you make decisions of like what we saw with the Maury Williams kid who reclassified. You can have situations like that, gives you opportunities and options to work with. So it's easy, but it's not much different as far as the work itself. It's just the work itself is broken up in parts.
Hey, big thanks to everyone who submitted questions on the premium recruiting board for Michael. Michael will be back in the coming weeks doing more of these, so make sure you head over to warchant.com if you haven't already. Now's the perfect time to. You can get 2 months on warchant.com for just $1. Use promo code FSU1. You see it there on the bottom of your screen. We'll have plenty more of these AMAs coming in the future. So live recruiting shows down the road as well. So make sure you hit the like button, turn the subscribe and notifications on as well so you get notified when we go live. And you'll see me and Michael here in the future on Warchant TV. Until then, thanks for watching this AMA recruiting video.